Okay, well, we're about one past the top of the hour, so I figure for everybody's sake of time, we're going to get started. Welcome to the MachineMetrics webinar series. Today's presentation, the state of the industry, manufacturing 2020, a year in review. We're really excited for this one today. And in our seventh State of the Industry panel, we are taking a look at the full year in review, all of 2020, and revealing some of the largest trends and insights that we've seen through manufacturing data. What will, I think for many of us, ultimately go down as an infamous year in history. 2020 in some ways has wreaked havoc, not only for the manufacturing industry and supply chains, but also for um, countries, nations, the world. And with our guest panel today, we're going to be sharing some of the most important takeaways that we were able to derive from the data that both the presenters today were able to pull away from this. And with conflicting hopes and fears, the forms of vaccines and even surging COVID cases still today, the future does remain largely uncertain. However, by providing data in the most up-to-date fashion as we can, we like to think that democratizing this type of information can give you the best information possible to make informed and prepared decisions as we move into the year 2021. Some of those things that we can hope you can take away are develop a better understanding of the complete impact of COVID in 2020, learn about the short and long-term impact that it may impose on the global manufacturing economy, and even understand how the manufacturing industry as a whole is responding to the given circumstances. And back after a few webinars off, I'm glad to join you again as your host and moderator. My name is Graham Immerman. I'm the VP of Marketing at MachineMetrics. It's great to be back. We are joined by two awesome panelists today. We have Zhang, who's the Chief Data Scientist at MachineMetrics, and Jerry Foster, the Chief Technology Officer for Plex. Lou, Jerry, give everybody a wave.
Thanks, Graham.
Awesome. So just some housekeeping items before we get started here. Our agenda for today is pretty straightforward. We're going to do a brief introduction to MachineMetrics for those of you who may not know who we are. We're then going to go right into those company data presentations. And we're going to save as much time as possible for that live Q&A discussion at the end. Last couple things before we do get started. For those of you wondering, yes, this webinar is being recorded and we will send you a link after this webinar. Fear not. We also highly encourage questions, and they're most welcome. As you can tell based on the slide, I'm serious. Ask them anytime. There is a Q&A section on the Zoom navigation that allows you to send those questions into the panel. We may be able to answer them in real time. We may save them for the Q&A section at the end. We'll do our best to get to all of them. Please do not hesitate to add those along the way. I also just wanted to loop in that we have a live webcast also next week featuring our partners at Fix Maintenance Software. And what we're taking on is, well, for manufacturers, how do you take your manufacturing company from a state of reactive maintenance to predictive and prescriptive maintenance? How do manufacturers reap the benefits of a modern maintenance strategy while avoiding the pitfalls along the way? In this webinar, members of Fix and MachineMetrics will discuss how to build a roadmap to driving automated maintenance solutions. And we'll even be providing a live demonstration of the power of our new combined offering between MachineMetrics and Fix that enables any manufacturer to monitor the health of their equipment in real time to automatically trigger maintenance activities. It's an amazingly powerful new capability that we're able to offer together. And we do encourage anyone who's interested in that subject to sign up through the MachineMetrics website on the events page. So getting into the main event here, I'm just going to give you guys a bit of a review for MachineMetrics for those of you who don't know us. Today, as you're probably aware, if you're in the manufacturing space at all, the top priority for all manufacturers is really maximizing efficiency. And to put it mildly, manufacturers have no choice but to do so right now, right? Maximizing efficiency for manufacturers begins with capturing insights from the heart of a company's operations, which are the machine assets that make things and the people who operate those things. The inefficiencies that exist within these machine assets and those processes surrounding those machines are the lowest hanging fruit to driving value immediately and the catalyst for enabling automation for digital factories. However, we know that the biggest obstacle to achieving this is that getting usable, actionable data and insights from these assets and people is really hard. So MachineMetrics, we were designed to make this very easy. So our intuitive and flexible platform for machine data easily collects and analyzes data from any piece of manufacturing equipment to deliver powerful, actionable insights and decisions to factory workers in a matter of minutes that go right to the bottom line for factories. Today, hundreds of manufacturers have connected thousands of machines to MachineMetrics across global factories, leveraging our plug-and-play machine connectivity, monitoring, and analytics to optimize shop floor productivity, increase machine utilization, and maximize the profitability driven from their factory floors. The first step in enabling this capability is MachineMetrics provides plug-and-play connectivity to machines, leveraging what you see here, an edge device to a network of machines. This process is easy, and it takes less than 20 minutes to connect to any automated manufacturing equipment. These edge devices, shown here as these green box in the photo, is connected directly to any control system of a modern piece of equipment. And sensors can be added to either legacy equipment with an additional digital and analog I/O module, also shown here. That machine data is then automatically transformed into standard data structures so that analytics can be instantly driven and insights can be taken from that data across every machine and streamed securely via Wi-Fi, Ethernet, or cellular to a centralized platform accessible from anywhere. That data, once it's in the cloud, which is designed specifically for machine data analytics. Also, high volume info of diagnostic and sensor data inputs that is associated with machines. Operational data is then layered on top of that machine data to add additional context. So not only do we know the machine conditions, but if the machine is in a setup stage, downtime, or even a maintenance, as well as the part numbers that are being produced. Lastly, right, to drive value, out-of-the-box applications deliver use cases to create immediate actionability, including machine monitoring, condition monitoring, predictive analytics. Those can manifest themselves in the forms of real-time dashboards, historical reports, rules-based workflows, text email notifications that deliver optimized processes to factory workers, custom factory applications and integrations into other systems built by our customers and partners can also provide additional value for that machine data and can be hosted by MachineMetrics. We're building an ecosystem of software developers that are passionate about solving manufacturing problems with data at scale. But to unlock the true potential of the digital factory, our platform seamlessly integrates that machine data and those data-driven insights with current shop floor systems, a concept that we call harnessing the machine data digital thread, to drive endless automations that digitize factory processes. And in doing so, MachineMetrics is not just an app platform, but we become an operating system for automation and autonomous factories, the engine that empowers a factory's automation. So that's my little spiel, and it's time for Lou to take over and start our first of the data-driven presentations. So I'm going to stop my screen share now and let Lou take over.
All right, thanks for the introduction, Graham. So as everyone knows, it's been a very eventful year, 2020, not just in manufacturing, but obviously across many, many different domains. Today, we're just going to focus on manufacturing and the effects various world events have had on our industry as a whole. So before I start, I see a couple new people here. I just want to go through a little bit of background about where this data is coming from. You know, as a data scientist, I am always a little skeptical of data, and I want to make sure I do my due diligence to make sure that it's not just baloney. So, you know, we really start on the shop floor. So we're connected to hundreds of factories in the U.S. and thousands of assets like this. Before MachineMetrics or machine monitoring came along, you really had to rely on your operators to tell you what was going on at the end of their shift or during their shift. So if you were behind by 50 parts or 500 parts, you wouldn't know until one of these guys told you. That's obviously not optimal. You want to know right away. You want to know on your iPad or on your phone when things are falling behind so you could start remedying the situation before it becomes too late. So we, as Graham said, are an IoT solution. Basically, this is the cabinet of a machine tool. And really all you actually need from us is this green box right here called an edge device. There's an Ethernet port that we plug into, and we make it, we really make it quite plug and play for you guys. So we take all the hard work out of it. We've written all these APIs and all these machine communication protocols to communicate with all sorts of machine tools. So most of our installations are plug and play like this. If you want information that's not on your control, say you want vibration or you want temperature from a specific area of the machine, we can also add something called an IO device, which basically lets you plug sensors in that monitor things that are not on your HMI. So this is really where all the magic starts. And if you have a really old machine who doesn't have any Ethernet ends, we can just bypass that completely actually and just do an IO solution. Usually what we'll do is we'll have a current transducer that measures amperage, vibration sensors, temperature, whatever, and we could monitor and display that information in real time, just like all the stuff that's coming from PLC. So what's the end result of this? So our customers can see their data on nice dashboards on their phone, on their tablets, on a big display on the shop floor. So you can know exactly what's going on your machine, basically second by second. So if it's behind, if it's ahead, if it's on, if it's off, if there's an alarm, all of that is readily available to you at any time. In addition to pulling data off the machine, we've also started to basically command machines as well. So this isn't just one way. We can also kind of close the feedback loop where if we collect something, say a condition or a temperature that's too high, we can actually actuate the machine to feed hold or do an offset or move its position. So we've really, over the past couple of years, evolved this product to be an entire solution for your factory floor. In addition, your operators can add context via tablets that are at every machine. So, they could add things like downtime, they can see their own progress, they can log in and out, you can track by shift, by operator, all sorts of things. So what's one of the results of this? So this is a table, so just a part of a table that we get. But basically, we've collected hundreds of millions of hours of machining across all of our machines. We know exactly, for every hour, obviously when it starts and when it ends, but also, when it's in cycle. So because we know the G-code program and when it's executing and when it's paused, when it's inactive or active, we know exactly how many milliseconds that machine has been operating for in that particular time span. We know how many seconds or milliseconds the spindle has been rotating, and of that portion, what portion of that has been cutting. So all this is really useful if you want to track the efficiency of your machines, your shifts, your operators, whatever. That's all up to you. We can see how many parts are produced automatically based off of how many G-code cycles it's gone through. And in addition to that, your operators are adding context, so you can see how many parts they rejected, how many parts were scrapped, and how many parts were non-conform. So this is a map from last time. We've actually grown quite a bit this year, which is especially amazing because it was COVID, but we had two record quarters last year, and I guess every quarter is a record quarter for us because we're a subscription-based company. So not only do we retain all the subscription from before, we're adding more. But what I mean by two record quarters is that we had a record number of factories and machines that signed on with us for quarter over quarter for 2 quarters last year. So I found that kind of amazing. It really just goes to show the demand for this sort of product, even in a year where GDP shrank and manufacturing slowed down a little bit. So these are all our customer sites. The size of the dot represents the number of machines. We have over 5 years of manufacturing data warehoused, billions of parts produced, billions of dollars of equipment monitored. So we have a fairly significant sample size. We actually reached out to AMT, the Association for Manufacturing Technology, and they basically pinned us at about a 2% margin of error for how accurate our sample really is. We are a statistically significant sample of manufacturing in the US. So with that being said, let's look at what happened in 2021 or 2020. So 2020 is this teal line right here. 2019 is green and 2018 is red. We're barely starting 2021, so there's not much to say about it. But basically what you saw is during the height of the pandemic, so really, April, mid-April or so, that's really when things bottomed out. You saw a 22% difference in utilization between this year or between 2020 and 2019. That gap actually very quickly narrowed, and by summer there was only a 1% difference. I found this pretty remarkable how quickly our industry was able to recover and learn how to deal with the various changes that were necessary to keep manufacturing going. And then the rest of the year, you kind of see these two lines crossing a lot. Basically, the utilization was within the margin of error at that time. So 2019 and 2020, after the summer, there was statistically not much difference in terms of machine utilization. So what's going on hour by hour? So this is just looking at utilization for 2019, which is the blue, or sorry, 2020, which is the blue, versus 2019, which is the red. You can see that there definitely was a dip, but it wasn't huge overall. And I know previously I discussed that there was some evidence of staggered shifts. So I had anticipated that the blue line would be a little flatter, but apparently, things that didn't last for very long. So what you really see is a very similar pattern to 2019. It's just shifted downwards by a little bit. So, you have your top utilization by hour at 10 o'clock, and 4 a.m. is when things are really bottoming out. How about day of week? So, Mondays and Fridays, they really are the laggards in terms of weekday utilization. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, coming as no surprise to people, they're probably known to be the powerhouses. They're the days where the most manufacturing gets done, at least for the machines we're tracking. And then Thursday, Friday, things really peter down. And Saturday and Sunday, obviously, people aren't doing much. So this is a distribution of utilization. So, we know what the average is and things like that, but what's it look like? So for those of you who are familiar with statistics, this is basically something called a probability mass function. It gives you the distribution of utilization given your entire sample size. So you can see that, you know, most commonly, factories are actually like the mode is somewhere around 18%. The average is higher because you kind of have a fat tail here of companies that really do a lot of manufacturing, and they're, you know, they're kind of leading the pack and pulling everybody up. But I found this pretty interesting where, you know, most people are only utilizing their machines about 20%. Some are at, you know, 50, 60, 70%. But really, you know, that 30% average that we throw out sometimes, this is a more accurate picture of what's actually going on. You can see that this is slightly bimodal, where there's another bump here around 45, 50%. This might be the job shops that have a lot of jobs coming in. And these guys are really pulling away from the pack and pulling utilization up for everybody else. So we've talked about uptime and utilization. So let's talk about downtime a little bit. So again, at these tablets, you know, operators can enter in why their machine stopped. You know, this machine stopped for 5 minutes because there was a tool failure, tool 34 broke. So that all comes to us. So in the app, in, you know, the application that our customers can see, they can see a nice cataloged view of every single reason for downtime they've had, how long it was, any annotation that the operator wants to add. But really where this adds value to us is that we can aggregate this across millions of entries, you know, because we're not just tracking one factory or a couple machines, we're tracking a lot of them. And so, you know, we can see across our entire data set what sort of trends are happening in terms of downtime. You know, are people having issues with their bar feeders? Are people having issues with their inserts? You know, things of that sort are all very evident to us, because when you're tracking across such a significant sample size, you're really able to surface a lot of industry trends that haven't been able to be surfaced before. So what we did is we took, you know, the operator messages, you know, all, not all million of them, but the most recent ones. So we took about 700,000 of them, and we did some natural language processing on them. So basically, you know, if we saw like lunch, or, you know, taking a break or going to the bathroom, that's operator unavailable. You know, if we saw like reamer broke, or, you know, unexpected downtime, that was unplanned mechanical, so on and so forth. So, you know, anecdotally, this I think makes a lot of sense, right? Because people are always complaining about lack of operators. You know, oh, I don't have enough people on the floor, I can't hire new people, you know, it's hard to get talent. That's really reflected in our data as well. Over half of downtime last quarter was due to operators being unavailable, either because they were working too many machines, or, you know, they were out for a day, or COVID. There are all sorts of reasons for that. Unplanned mechanical, which is also not a surprise, because, you know, a lot of surveys to manufacturers ask, you know, what's your top reason for wanting Industry 4.0? And people are always like, oh, well, I want to do preventative maintenance because things always break. Well, that's reflected here. Almost a quarter of all downtime is due to unplanned mechanical issues on your machine. And then, you know, rounding this out, you know, it's just lack of materials, or, you know, don't have enough business coming in. And then some other minor ones down here as well. But really, the takeaway from this is that we need more people on the shop floor, and we need more of a solution to prevent these catastrophic issues on machines that stop production. So really, actually, MachineMetrics data science focus for this year is on this particular item here, the unplanned mechanical. What we are really focused on in 2021 and going into, you know, the rest of this decade really, is in deploying predictive solutions that can catch these issues before they happen, and feed, hold, or stop your machines before it creates any sort of catastrophic issue. We've actually had a couple deployments at our customer sites, and we've basically seen this this category of downtime go down from, you know, 20% of all their downtime to near nothing. And we're able to do this because we're collecting so much data from these machines that we can leverage patterns we see in one place to solve problems in another. So this is a pretty unique position that we're in, but just kind of rounding this out, that's sort of a plug for some of the other capabilities that we have that we think can really alleviate this industry level problem that's happening. So with that, that's it for my presentation. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Jerry. So Jerry, please go ahead.
Right. Let's see here, sharing my screen. All right, can you guys see see my screen there?
I can see it, Jerry.
All right,
I see it too, Jerry.
All right, thanks everyone. I was like, am I on? Am I hello? All right. So thank you, Graham and MachineMetrics for putting this together, and thank you, Lou, for your insights and the data that you shared. It's a really good stuff. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jerry Foster. I'm the CTO and co-founder at Plex Systems. When we first started Plex, I had long flowing locks of golden blonde hair. But now when I give a presentation, marketing is like, we can't see you because the lights are reflecting off your forehead. So anyways, I wish I was joking, but I'm not. So I've been around for a long time at Plex and been involved in our evolution and our growth. Just been involved in manufacturing and technology my entire career at Plex, and the intersection of those two things and figuring out how we can use technology and leadership and culture to really advance the causes of our manufacturing customers. So what is Plex? You may not be familiar with Plex. We are the smart manufacturing platform. We provide everything necessary for a manufacturer to operate, ERP, MES, IoT, supply chain, quality. And we do this by connecting the people and the systems and the machines and the supply chains and track all of that data and automate those processes and then bring them together for visibility and quality and control. We are built in the cloud for manufacturers. Everything is cloud-based. We have terrific uptime, a very high renewal rate. And so we've been very successful doing that. We have about 670 customers, more than that actually, around the world in almost 30 countries. We do 8 billion and record 8 billion transactions every single day. And that's a lot. It's even more than the number of times that the average engineer has a debate about Star Wars versus Star Trek in their life, but not by much. But we record everything that happens on the manufacturing floor and then keep that for our customers to use that for value add in their operations. We serve customers across the spectrum from small and medium-sized businesses to enterprise level companies. And because of the cloud nature of our product, we can scale to manufacturers of any size. So what is it that we've done that makes us relevant to this particular conversation about data and manufacturing and what happened in 2020? As I said, we're completely cloud-based. And because of that, we have access to 20 years of hardcore manufacturing data from our customers. In addition to helping our customers by providing awesome software, we are always asking, how can we help our customers with all of this data that they are entrusting us and storing in our system? So we launched the COVID-19 Resource Center in March as a response to the uncertainty that was being generated around COVID-19. We wanted to help and contribute and help our customers and manufacturers and analysts and the press to see what was actually happening around the world. Because we track this information real time. We have a real-time view into what is actually happening. It's not a week late or a month late, or you don't have to wait for a particular index to come out next month. We can tell you what's going on right now. So because of that, we said, okay, let's zero in on a specific one specific metric of all of the data that we collect. What's one metric that we could use, that we could measure throughout this whole pandemic and this whole crisis? So what we decided to track was this thing called production. And we're tracking production across, right here, this is across all of our North American customers, although we are global, obviously, as I said a second ago. And what production is every time one of our customers fills up a container at a machine, like they fill up a box of washers or a pallet of engine parts or a container, anytime one of those fills up and then they move it away from the machine, that is a production record. So it doesn't matter what the quantity or what the units are, it's a single production record when that thing is filled up and moved. So now we can normalize that across all of our different industries and our different units and our different sizes and all the different ways that our customers build things. We can normalize that by production. So what you see here is the number of production records across all of our North American customers through the last time we met, which was October. Looking back, actually in August, we had achieved 100% of our pre-pandemic levels that you can see early in March there. And we achieved that, our customers, I should say, achieved that in August. And then when we left off last time, we had this webinar. It was October, and we were up to 103%. So we exceeded our pre-COVID levels of production. So then the question is, where are we now? What have we done since that time? And you can see we've actually done very well as far as our customers are concerned. It was relatively flat through October and November, that rate of production. And then of course we had the dip at Thanksgiving, but then production just shot up. And we actually hit there at in the middle of December, 111% of our pre-COVID levels. So our customers in North America were operating at 11% more, a rate of production that was 11% more than they were before the crisis hit in March, which is pretty phenomenal. Another thing that's fascinating to me is when we superimposed a number of daily COVID-19 cases on top of our production numbers. So this is the production graph that you just saw a second ago for 2020 for all of our North American customers. And then when you put on top of that the number of COVID-19 cases, it's very interesting. You can see how we had the initial rise and then a dip, and then as you all are aware, the huge increase that we've been having the last few months. But what's fascinating is when you look at that increase in COVID-19 cases, you don't see a corresponding dip in production. In fact, it continues to increase, and then of course it leveled off a bit in October, November, and then another huge jump in December. In fact, our highest rate of production for the year coincided basically with the highest number of cases in the country as well. And so you might be saying, what is that telling us, or what do you get from that? And what I get from that is that our customers and manufacturers in general, they've been able to put in place the proper protocols and technology and practices that mitigate the potential effects of the increasing pandemic, and allows them to continue to operate at a high rate of efficiency, as we see right here. It just goes with what I've said all along, that manufacturers, they meet these crises head on. There's not a challenge that any manufacturer that I've worked for or been a part of isn't ready to tackle. And we do what we got to do, and it makes me proud to be part of this industry, as you see here. So just to look at a couple specific countries, especially when we talk about supply chain, that might be interesting. Here's China. Production in China tells us an interesting story. They were down for much less in February, much less time, only about a week than North American customers were. They came back pretty strong, and then their recovery stalled a bit in March and April as they had some more COVID-19 issues. And then they reversed that trend. And they've been recovering at a good clip, getting to about 80% of their pre-COVID levels, right up there until the Chinese National Day holiday in October, which is where we left off. And since then, they've continued that increase, that upward trajectory, though not quite at the same rate as before the holiday. And they've peaked out at about 85% of their pre-COVID levels. Now compare that to Mexico. Mexico is an incredible story. This is the whole year 2020 for Mexico. Their increase in production has just continued unabated before finally dipping at the Christmas holiday at the end of the year. But they actually hit 119% of their pre-COVID levels. And I think that speaks to a lot of the adjustment and changing to some of the supply chain logistics during the pandemic, and trying to get parts and increasing our relationship with Mexico and the suppliers in Mexico. And we see that right here in this graph. Now, another way that we looked at our data now that the year is over is we can compare our 2020 data to 2019. And what you see here, the blue is the 2020 data that we've been looking at on multiple slides. The orange is the 2019 data. And we have an interesting comparison here, or some interesting points that we can take from here. first, you see at the beginning of the year, we were already operating at about a 16% increase in 2020 over 2019. And that just came from, normal growth that we would experience year over year as we added more customers. Then, of course, the pandemic hit and we had the huge drop in the late spring, early summer. But then you see a pattern emerge, which was very similar in 2020 to the pattern in 2019. And that was encouraging. In fact, when we left off last time in October, we're back to about 14% more production than we were year over year than we were in 2019, which means we were very close to where we were at before the pandemic hit. And then, of course, we've had the huge spike that we already looked at, resulting in an 18% improvement this year over 2019 at the exact same time. And that speaks to what our customers are telling us over and over, is that they are just being hammered right now. One of our customers said their backlog is bigger than they've ever seen, and they are really struggling to keep up. It makes me wonder what that number there would be if they were able to handle all of the work that is available to them. So very fascinating. So let's go back to our original North American production chart that you see here. This image now should be starting to be ingrained into your brain. One of the things that we were asking ourselves, and we talked about this last time, is when you look at that huge dip right there in late spring, early summer, what was the impact of that? What was the bite that was taken out of production? And how can we determine that, or at least estimate that? In order to answer that question, we have to figure out what production would have been. So we built an algorithm based on 2019 patterns, showing what 2020 might have looked like had the pandemic not hit. And that's what you see here in this teal line. So this is like an alternate reality. If you're a Star Trek fan, it's an estimation of what production probably would have looked like, or might have looked like, had the pandemic not hit. So now we can actually do some math and replace that question mark with real numbers, measuring the hit to production at different spots across the timeline. For instance, if we take a look here at June 28th, which is kind of arbitrary, but it's actually the top side of the U recovery before production starts to flatten a bit. We take a look at that right when we came out of that, and measuring this gray area here, we found the hit to production, that dropped to be 56%. That's staggering when you think about it. The drop in the hit to production that happened when we were just coming out of the crisis. If we move that timeline down a little bit, maybe at the beginning of September, we can see we start to gain a little bit. The hit to production there from the beginning of the year to that point was only 39%. As we continue to move that down the timeline, this is our last webinar on October 25th, we were actually down to 32%. And at the time, I predicted that we were going to end up at the end of the year with a loss of around 27%. And I was close. We actually ended at about a 20% hit to production overall compared to what we might have been had there not been a pandemic. And this is interesting because on one hand, that's a huge 26% number. It's a huge recovery from that initial hit of 56%. So that's some really good news, being able to come flying back like that. On the other hand, it is a bit sobering because if you think about it, just imagine at the beginning of the year, if everyone said, okay, here's our projections. No, we're just going to take a quarter of that right off the top. That's kind of sobering. So there's good news and bad news there. So, we did take a hit, but we recovered very, very quickly. Another way to look at the data is this chart right here. So this is actually taking a look at one particular industry, automotive. We cover multiple industries, of course, but automotive is one of our strongest. We have our roots here in Southeast Michigan, Detroit. So automotive is one of our strong customer base. And this chart, what you see here, is a comparison of a customer's pre-COVID production compared to their production on this screen in April, which was the worst part of the crisis. So what we see here is for every orange-blue combination, and for many of these customers, there's not a blue. What you're seeing is the orange is the average weekly production before the pandemic, and the blue is the production for the week of April 27th. So you can see for the vast majority of the customers, they just had the average weekly production before the pandemic, and they were doing nothing the week of April. Some of our customers were actually doing some production there. You see in the blue, a few of the customers, some of them had pivoted to doing hand sanitizers or PPE. So they were doing some essential work there, and that's the blue that you see. But you can just see how drastic the situation was in April for the majority of our automotive customers. Now compare that to December 14th, the week of December 14th. I didn't use December 21 or 28 because that's a holiday, so that would have skewed everything. But now when you compare the average weekly production pre-pandemic compared to the production that our, excuse me, our customers were doing on December 14th, it's a drastic difference. With a couple of exceptions, the majority of our customers are running higher than their pre-COVID production rates, some significantly so. You see some of those customers are doing over double the production that they were. So, and the rest of them, even if they're not at their pre-pandemic numbers, they're pretty close. And this just tells us again that manufacturers are resilient. It also tells us there's a ton of business out there that we are trying to play catch up with and get on top of. And our customers are telling us they don't see this trend diminishing. Most of them are seeing this rate of the backlog trying to be filled continuing at least until the middle of this year. All right, final data set, and then we'll hand it over to some questions. This is one of my favorite data sets. So what this is actually not actual numbers, it's a percentage. And so what you see here is two graphs. One of them, again, should look familiar with you. The black is our production, and the teal is the number of unique users using our system. But these aren't actual numbers, these are percentages. So we are taking these as a percentage of the high point in March 8th, and that's the barometer. So on March 8th, right before the pandemic hit, we recorded the number of production units, and we recorded the number of active users of the system, and we stuck those two numbers in stone. And then every other data point on this graph is a percentage of that high point barometer. So now we can normalize the users and production on top of each other and notice how those two compare each other and how they're trending against each other. And we see some really fascinating things. You can see the big dip, of course, in the spring and summer. And then, of course, when we start to come out of it, we have this interesting spot here. I believe that's at the end of July, where the amount of production we're doing as a percent actually crosses over the number of active users. And then from that point forward, you can see the rate of production continues to increase at a high rate. And the number of active users is increasing also, but it's much more flat. And what we end up with there right before we broke for the Christmas holidays at the end of the year is a 16% gap between the production and the active users. And that's significant because basically what we're saying there is we're doing about 10% more work with 6% fewer workers, and that's where the 16% comes from. And as long as I've been a part of manufacturing, one of the mantras that we've always had to live by is how do we do more with less? Always being squeezed by the customers. You need to reduce the cost on this, reduce the price on this part, et cetera. So it's something that manufacturers are used to, and I think they put all that experience to good use here in the last 10 to 12 months trying to get through this COVID-19 crisis and figuring out how do I do more with much less. And they've so far been successful, and I would expect nothing less. So I look forward to seeing our customers continue this trend through the rest of this year. So that is my spiel. I hope you found it interesting, and I will hand it over here and make yourself available for questions.
Awesome as always, Jerry. That was great. And Lou, also thank you so much for your presentation. Gosh, like what an amazing thing to see, right, Jerry? That we're able to do more with less. There are times I think in all history, right, where these moments occur, right, where industries change, right, and adaptations happen in real time, adaptations, and it's remarkable to see manufacturing's resilience to survive be the adaptation really of efficiency and automations. I think that's
we saw that in the 2008, 2009 recession. We thought that was a big deal. I remember presenting after that, looking at, our production is down like 15%. Our customers are like, oh my goodness, and then holy cow, production's down 60%. I mean, we had no idea this was coming. It's amazing.
Yeah, a round of applause for the manufacturing world, really, for our reaction, right? And not to mention, some of the more amazing things, and we've gotten tons of questions. So some of them, I'll get to them as much as I can, but to the point, right? A lot of people within the space and those on this webinar noticed the manufacturer's agility to begin production of, medical devices and other COVID-related treatments. And, in some ways, like it's a testament to, kind of like a newfound agility of the manufacturing vertical to be able to, to change operations to support, tasks like that. It really just shows how, manufacturing in so many ways is so ingrained in our daily life, right? We sometimes will look at it, as like building things, but we don't realize that, sometimes it changes the way that we interact or even treat, diseases, like this. So I think that's really cool. So I got a bunch of questions. I'm going to get to them as fast as I can. So, Jerry, this one was for you. How do we interpret like that similar to over COVID levels of production when we saw a big supply chain shortage in that different industries? Why manufacturing didn't slow down production, right? Due to not being able to deliver products and receive raw material. Essentially, like there were supply chain disruptions, right?
Yep.
A lot of articles I was reading were saying, hey, without supply chain flowing, production is going to stop, right? How did that, how are we able to maintain that resilience during that time?
That's a good question. And I think the number of answers would be equal to the number of customers we have and how they did that. A lot of them were able to do some adjustments on their supply chain. You saw the huge increase in Mexico and ramp up their relationship and the amount of business they were doing with their suppliers in Mexico. And then some of them, they just did whatever they had to do. We had one customer, they chartered a 737 and flew it to China and picked up the parts they needed and flew it back because they couldn't get it through the normal, supply chain that they were used to. So they just did whatever they had to do. And then they just became more efficient using materials they had on the floor, parts they had on the floor, repurposing materials, doing whatever you got to do to get through that. So it was very varied. And it's kind of fascinating.
It is fascinating. And Lou, like, this kind of, this is a question that kind of came up on the, from a couple of people asking around, we're looking at, economic indicators and other, performance, does, that MachineMetrics utilization data, the data that we collect and, does it track to other economic indicators or like, does it, in any ways like indicate or even some ways correlate with other, trends that we see within the industry?
It does, and we've actually gotten quite a bit of attention because of that. As you can imagine, these economic indicators are often released monthly or quarterly, but if we have live up to the minute data, someone's going to have a big advantage if they know that. The closest metric that our indicator tracks to is actually cap util for they call it other manufacturing, which is really the Fed's catch-all for things like medical devices. We do a lot of work with medical. So it doesn't surprise me that we are a close tracker to that particular metric, as well as just cap util for a whole lot of industries, other industries too. It's not our main focus. So, we're not trying to like do much with it per se. It's kind of just like if our customers are curious about it, we'll have a conversation with them about it. But we do, with our plus or minus 2% margin of error on manufacturing utilization as a whole in the US, you can imagine we do have a pretty accurate pulse on what's going on.
Cool. Thanks, Lou. And I'm going to keep rolling because we got a bunch of questions to get to. Jerry, you mentioned a couple times that manufacturers are surviving COVID by doing more with less. This isn't just for Jerry, Lou, this is for you as well. But Jerry, kick it off. Like, how are they doing that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for a lot of our customers, when they came back and they saw the production requests and requirements start to ramp up, you don't have time to put in place new technologies and that sort of thing. So a lot of them is just brute force, 3 shifts, working weekends, just doing whatever they had to do to get those parts out the door. So it was just the force of will. But of course, that's not sustainable long term. So during that time, we have a lot of customers are actually starting to invest in technology, automation, and cobots, and that sort of thing that are now starting to get into the plants to compensate for this force of will. We have one of our food and beverage customers their volume is up 66% over this time last year. And so for this year, they have to double the speed on half of their lines. But they're not allowed any more people in the facility than they already have now. So they've got to double the speed on half the lines without more people. So the only way they can do that is automation. Cobots, palletizers, box makers, case packers, all these machines and automation processes that can help augment the workers and increase that efficiency. So it's brute force and automation. Those are the two things.
Lou, any thoughts from your side?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just go back to the point that, we, MachineMetrics, had 2 record quarters this year in a pandemic year. And it just goes to show, we're a company that specializes in, industrial automation and industry 4.0. And that's how people are doing more with less. You're able to bring on these new systems that utilize technology from the 21st century. Not just in terms of dashboarding, but also in terms of predictive, or in terms of being able to create workflows on your shop floor, integrating with all your other systems. That's going to be much more efficient than having to play telephone in your factory day in and day out. And I think this is the way things are kind of going. It's kind of like one is clearly more streamlined and efficient than the other. And I would just say, adoption of new technology and investment in platforms like MachineMetrics and Plex are probably what is driving additional efficiency in American manufacturing right now.
Right. And I think, look, I mean, there's a growing disparity between the number of people entering the field of manufacturing and the needs of the industry, right? There's a talent shortage. You can't just throw people at this problem, right? Just to be simple about it, right? So like automation, systematizing, integration between systems, that's a solution. And so that actually brings me to another question that we were asked by the audience, which is, is there an overlap between Plex and MachineMetrics capabilities? I think a better way to look at it is, like, how do your systems complement one another? Forgive me, guys, if I maybe take a stab at this, and I'd love both of your pitches on this too. But I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, but really to unlock that full potential of any, the digitization of any shop floor, manufacturing platforms like Plex and MachineMetrics must seamlessly integrate, right? So those data-driven insights, right, retrieving accurate data from each system symbiotically is critical for systems like either a MachineMetrics or an ERP system, for example, to operate it as optimally as possible, right? So in that example, right, integrating MachineMetrics data into a system like Plex or vice versa, right, can drive a number of opportunities for efficiency gains and automation. Some examples that I have, off the top of my head, I guess, would be like, the integration of real-time production data from a system like MachineMetrics into an ERP can enable more accurate quoting and scheduling, right? Even allowing for real-time updating of standards, quoting, delivery times. That manual data entry, right, in general has been, we all know, remarkably ineffective and inefficient, and it's just time-consuming and inaccurate, right? So integrating systems, whether it's MachineMetrics and Plex or other shop floor systems, right, removes that time, removes that inaccuracy, removes the manual component of that necessary communication, right? I guess another use case could be connecting data from ERP to shop floor to provide, text or email notifications if ideal times or build qualities are being hit or exceeded, so you can make those automated scheduling changes in real time, right? So those are just a couple examples. I don't know if you guys wanted to provide more, if that's like enough for you guys, for me to move on to the next question.
I would just say that's a really good comprehensive answer, so I don't want to repeat anything. I would just add that the integration, we're very complementary. And so when you look at the ERP, MES side of things that we provide and the direct machine stuff that MachineMetrics provides, we can add context, bigger context to that actual production data that is extremely useful when you start to get into things like analytics and predictive and machine learning. So there's an end-to-end capability there that's realized with the complementation between the two systems.
Absolutely. So, Lou, I don't want to change the subject, but we get a lot of questions about predictive. I don't want to like change the total subject of this, but let's give some quick answers to these. Yeah, I think it's worth time. Could you give the audience one example of a predictive solution, right? Like a solution that you're able to drive for a customer, and then um, uh, another question for you, just as a follow-up to that, was does the system predict tool failure likelihood or track tool lives and prompt even like say an order if you hit your pre-specified minimum quantities to order more, things like that? Is that something that MachineMetrics is capable of?
You hear me, Graham?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. I got a
screen though. Looks like you're trying to share maybe.
This is a screenshot. Sharing my screen right now, but
yeah, try resharing.
I think we're losing him. The screen share, put it over the edge.
Yeah,
all right, we're back. We're back in business.
All right, there we go.
So what I was saying is, this is an example of a predictive case that we solved for customers. So they're making these tourniquet handles. That's what these things are, and these are the tools that they use. So this is a good tool. This is a drill bit that's making this groove right here. And what they do with their machines is they run them hard, way harder than they should. And so they break these drill bits, and instead of making a nice groove like this, they now make this like kind of scratched up groove because this tool doesn't do its job, and then the finishing tool comes in and it tries to finish and it doesn't go so well. So they want to keep running their machines hard because they're like, oh, we're making a lot of money, we're making a lot of parts. And what we told them was, yeah, you could keep doing that. And how about this? You won't have this problem anymore. So that's exactly the problem we solved. Really, 4 months into deploying this solution, we've issued 55 feed holds on their machines. Of those feed holds, 52 out of 55 of them had been accurate. So 52 times out of 55, they have had that issue with that broken tool making bad parts like that. And we've only not caught 2 failures during this entire time. The total effect of this is that we've saved over 2,000 parts, 2,000 scrap parts from being made. So those bad parts that they had to pick out of the bin before and risk selling to customers who would complain about QA issues, that doesn't exist at all. But outside of that, it's like, these are the numbers, but really it's had an impact on shop culture as well. They're saying that the time savings that their Swiss turn machines that make these things are monumental. You guys might be able to relate to this, but you might lose a third of your shift's worth of parts if they're being made by tools that are not great. And then your guys have to spend half an hour to an hour sorting through the parts bin to identify the scrap. And that's really demotivating, I would think. It's demoralizing, and nobody wants to do that. So ever since we deployed this 4 months ago, they're not wasting any time doing that, and they're not creating any scrap parts. So this is a huge cost and time savings for them. And this is just one case of many, but it's a pretty good representative example of what we can do.
Yeah, can I jump in, Graham? That's fantastic. And Plex also tracks tool life and predicts end of life and failure modes and that as well. And the cool thing, in addition to what Lou just described, is now it's not just predictive anymore. Now, because both of our systems are in the cloud, you can now take the aggregate set of data, and now we can start to tell you, hey, this is the tool that's most efficient. This is the tool that goes the longest without breaking. This is the tool that has the fewest causes the fewest amount of scrap. So now it's not just helping you with the specific tooling life. We can actually give you information on making better choices and saving 5 or 10 grand per tool or whatever it is by the power of the data that we are collecting.
Awesome, cool. Yeah, and I do urge, for what it's worth, anybody who is here who's interested in any of these solutions, don't hesitate to check out MachineMetrics.com, Plex, I believe.com. Is it Plex Systems or Plex.com? The company's websites, respective websites, check them out. learn more about what they're able to do. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time, especially Jerry and Lou. I just want to thank them so much. This has been such an amazing series. It's brought a lot of like hope, faith, and information to the industry during this time. If anyone has any questions outside of this webinar, don't hesitate. You can either reach out to Lou, directly, Jerry directly, or me, Graham at MachineMetrics.com directly. I'll make sure that everyone has the contact information of everybody today. Sorry we weren't able to get to more, but I want to thank you all so much for the time. We'll send out a recording, and we look forward to doing it again. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks guys.
Everyone.
Thanks.